Are you satisfied with your understanding of sustainability? If you are not, imagine a journey together, a pluralistic one, with academia, innovators, startups, NGOs, all looking for solutions to the greatest challenge of our time. My name is Samuele Tini, and this is the Sustainability Journey. Welcome to a new episode. Today we are going into one of the emerging areas of our planet, the Middle East. And we do it today with an SG and sustainability expert, and not a small one of the top 100 voices in the Middle East, Hassaan Ghazali. Hassaan, it's a pleasure and honor having you here today.
Thank you so much, Samuel. It's an honor to be here with you.
Hassaan, you are an expert in sustainability, especially in the Middle East, and your work, of course, and you have taken multiple leadership positions. So can you walk through your journey and what were your motivation to focus on sustainability?
Thank you, Samuel. So my blood runs green. That's what I tell people. I'm committed to this. And I started my career pretty much like a lot of people I've seen in this space as an environmental lawyer. Back in Pakistan, filing public interest environmental litigation, being an activist for human rights in that part of the world. And I've been trained by the very best, people who have changed the face of India. I've been trained by them. So I got very good at filing lawsuits. Then the government said, listen, we need someone like you to help us against someone like you. I worked with the government on urban areas, helping cities develop in a sustainable way. Went on to work for the USAID, went from working on very urban issues to agriculture and livestock, food production systems, really got an in-depth exposure there and helping make those sustainable. After that, I moved here to the UAE with a Big Four consulting firm. And the focus at that point was these complex mega projects. And one thing I really liked about this part of the world was that they were committed to doing the right thing for workers' welfare, the right thing for environmental health and safety, and of course, finding financial savings, commercial excellence through good contract management. So did a lot of that from a risk management perspective. And then everyone's favorite pandemic, COVID, hit. And so I went back to Pakistan, started doing farming of all things. It was a lovely experience. Started looking at subsistence farming and working with multiple stakeholders on how we can improve food production. And when COVID finished, I moved back here, worked with some of the best NGOs on sustainability, looking at finance, investment, technology, and policy. And I'm pretty much doing the same thing right now, using these three levers with a number of entities here.
Fantastic, Hassaan, and such a career that also touches some of the things I'm doing. Also, me, I'm working on the grassroots, working in different areas and touching on sustainability. And going a bit deeper through your experience, especially in the emerging areas, so Pakistan and also the Gulf, now in the Middle East. So I want to ask, Middle East is undergoing transition towards sustainability. We know that has unique challenges, especially coming from the background of being based on economy based on oil and gas. So how do you see sustainability evolving, especially in your area? And what are the issues that they need to be addressed?
I think the first thing we need to accept is when you say Middle East, it means many countries, and these are not homogenous, right? I would love for everyone's GDP to be up there with Saudi or the UAE, but it just isn't. You've got, of course, the leaders that are Saudi and UAE, of course, but then you've also got countries like Jordan. You've got countries like Lebanon, Yemen, Morocco, Syria. It's not the same there. It's like almost like you're comparing apples to frozen peas. Therefore, you have to take every country or jurisdiction in the context of which it operates. So while there are these wide gaps between countries, within a particular country, there is an immense scope to bridge particular gaps for service delivery or financing. There's a huge potential. And yes, you're right, the evolution is underway, spurred on by a lot of public sector policy nudges, but also private sector taking things seriously. I think the fundamental issue right now from an environmental perspective is water scarcity. Let's face it, it's the Middle East. There's a lot of arid land out here, increasing heat, increasing desertification. And this is particular to, let's say, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or Egypt. But then you come to a country like the UAE and you see its massive expansion of its urban area. So urbanization has its own issues, the demands on energy, the demands on land use for, let's say, waste management. These are all some of the, let's say, the environmental issues being faced by let's just say KSA and the UAE. But then you go down to, let's say, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. You have completely different issues there. I wouldn't even highlight environmental issues as being, top of the list. There you've got political instability. You've got a refugee crisis, So then you have to kind of distinguish, well, what is the prescription for each country? So this is really where I see, like, there's all these disparities. People just seem to think the Middle East is Dubai. It's not. There's a lot more to it, and it's got this texture that people really have to get here to appreciate. Now, amongst these environmental and social issues, I think there's a lot of background radiation, and it's very strong. Okay, so while I love, as I say, I love to keep one eye on the smokestack for emissions, but I keep one eye on oil prices. I think that is one of the biggest. It's an economic challenge that's facing countries right now. You might know this, that many of the budgets are built up on $100 per barrel of oil. Saudi Arabia's entire budget is built up on that. Oil price is currently sitting at 72 roughly. It fell down to 66 just a few days ago. That's scary. I've been here before. I've seen what happened. It's the closest thing you can say approaches a financial crisis. So there's a financial squeeze. It raises some opportunities, but also risks. You might have heard recently the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, which many looked at as being this funder of everything, is actually tightening its belts, reviewing all contracts, scaling down projects. You might have heard of NEOM, the line. There's a reason for that. It's driven by economic consideration. So I think there's that. So you keep an eye on the oil prices. The second, which is more social, is you have to remember the youth represent over 55% of the population generally across MENA countries. What does that mean? Employment. You've got to find jobs for these people. You've got to provide them other things like medical insurance, health insurance, So there's a serious challenge there. These are these pressures that are coming, and this is what's going to affect public policy down the road. And you might see it very soon. OPEC is planning funny things. I think in October, the Chinese demand is down, EVs are up. I mean, it's going to be quite challenging if you look at the macro level. But the direction of travel is going to be for cost optimization and resource efficiency. This is what you'll see in the future. Now, cost optimization is nothing new. We've been doing it since the 80s, right? It was classic 80s consulting, was how do we optimize cost. The change and the new driver is how well they're going to start being more efficient in resource use. And I'm not talking about just enhanced oil recovery in the oil and gas sector. That's been done for ages. I'm talking about serious investments in recycling waste, reusing waste in multiple purposes. You've got recycling facilities coming up. You've got biodiesel being prepared. Green steel is coming out. And on top of this, you've also got now these very interesting waste trading platforms. I mean, how beautiful is a world where you can log into an app and you can see, well, this particular input for me is available here, and you can trade that. So these are the things you're going to see are going to increase down the road. So challenging situation, but again, one eye on smokestack, one eye on oil prices. It's going to make all the difference.
And it's very interesting perspective, Hassaan. And of course, to do that, and you mentioned a bit, you need also an alliance between government, private sector, especially to respond. And this is touching also a bit on the reality we live here in Africa, where we have a huge young population that is demanding jobs growth, but of course we need to do it sustainably. So one of the things that you have discussed, the sovereign fund, the public-private partnership, which they are important, to put together the public sector, the private sector to drive this decarbonization and work. So which are your thoughts on this collaboration, especially in the region, which have also important funds there, and which the steps, especially government businesses, can do towards really accelerate even more this race that is the net zero objective that everybody is talking about?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Public-private partnerships are essential. Without them, things are going nowhere. And there's a great deal of recognition, particularly within Saudi and perhaps more so within the UAE. What's good for business is good for the UAE. This is no secret. And the government has found its place. It sets up the rules of the game, which are mostly principles based, which is good. And then the private sector does what it needs to do. Essential, but there's a difference here. When you see, when you say private sector, there are multiple players in that which you have to distinguish. You've got the large businesses, right? They don't have much problem, right? They're already, I think over 50% of the large businesses in the MENA region already have mitigating initiatives. They're already disclosing scope 1, scope 2. So much less of a problem there. The actual issue is sitting with SMEs. They represent over 90% of the total businesses operating. And they employ anywhere from 35 to 40% to about 75% in Egypt of the workforce is employed by SMEs, and they contribute significantly. It's about 60% to GDP. But they need a very delicate touch. It's kind of the backbone of the economy. There's still gaps in awareness. There's still very few, let's say, regulatory nudges on SMEs. Of course, financing is required, and the crucial component is technology. So the question is, how does government address these issues? So some of the things they've done, which I find very interesting, are they've set up this SME climate hub here in the UAE. And they've got very clear targets. They want half scope 1 and scope 2 emissions by 2030, net zero by 2050, and of course, disclosure. But with that, they're also setting up these innovation hubs. You might have heard of Hub 71 operating right here in my city, Abu Dhabi, which is really building that ecosystem of startups and SMEs, particularly those are looking at climate. And then you've got the DIFC Innovation Hub, which is doing similar things. So I think it's all, the pieces are in place, but more needs to be done. The government is very clear. They set up a industrial decarbonization strategy with very clear targets. So they want to reduce emissions by 5% by 2030, 60% by 2040, and about 90% plus by 2050. Now, the gauntlet has been thrown. So now the private sector needs to step up and start taking initiatives, right? Some of the key things that are happening, which I find very interesting, within state-owned enterprises, there's a lot of focus on value chain partnerships, where you engage with suppliers, and particularly this is important for scope 3. And a lot of the ADNOC in particular, the national oil company in Abu Dhabi, is really leading that charge. So I think there, yeah, you've got the makings of a very good petri dish for success to come. But transactionally, I think there's a lot happening in the region. Just yesterday, we had the fourth MENA PPP conference in Dubai, and some great insights coming out of that, which I'd be happy to share with you. So over 25% of all projects in the MENA region, I'm talking overall, are PPPs. That represents $700 billion worth of investments coming in through PPPs. That's great. And guess what? No surprises. 62% of these are in the energy sector. So we see where the focus is. We see what needs to be done. Egypt is currently leading. They've got a lot of nuclear projects, green hydrogen, onshore wind, but there's also a lot of solar, a lot of wastewater treatment and desalination. So great work happening. You'll see more. It's not going to decrease because, as I said earlier, that oil price, when that falls, you'll see more PPPs because you've got as they call the viability gap, which needs to be funded. So you'll see more and more PPPs coming up. I think there's the number of things that still need to be done. As I said, because it's not homogeneous, there is still a lot of regulatory disparities in PPP frameworks. Some countries like the UAE have them, but many don't. So I think governments need to work on that. But there needs to be a lot of transparency in tendering. I know it's basic. I thought we moved past the stage where tendering would have issues, but really you need a lot of work over there. Investors like it. So it works. And then, of course, appropriate risk transfer, how you structure a deal, which is great for management consultants and lawyers because it's a gold mine for them. But you still need to do that. But from a private, if now this is from, let's say, the government's perspective, what they need to do, what the private sector needs to do is actually be a little bold. The priority health sectors are very clear, particularly for the UAE. You've got infrastructure, you've got energy, healthcare, education. It's a gold mine. So really, I think the idea is to bring people together to sort of unfurl the ambitions. But let me just say one key component here is technology enablement. I think you'll see a lot of things happening through public-private partnerships in this space. Now, I can give Two examples, they're my favorite examples. One is very topical, the flavor of the month, artificial intelligence. Now, the UAE has a very clear ambition. They want to be the world leader in AI by 2031. And Samuel, if the UAE wants to be the world leader in AI by 2031, I guarantee you they will become that. So like some of the interesting deals that have happened recently, Microsoft invested in entity here, the AI company here called G42 to the tune of about $1.5 billion. And that's primarily for AI development, scale up, commercialization. And then both these companies got together and invested 1 billion in Kenya, digital investments. Brilliant. So, it kind of like, how does it say? They paid forward. So that's one great thing that's happened. And it isn't just, let's say, as I said, private sector has different flavors to it. They've also involved the academia. So you have the Mohammed bin Zayed University for Artificial Intelligence. They're involved in this. They're carrying out a lot of research. So kudos to the government, let's say the industry and the academia that is doing great things. And you'll see the AI race, inshallah, the UAE will win. Now, staying on the role of academia, my next example for you is graphene, wonder material, the strongest material, man-made material we know. The applications are immense, right? So it was developed at the University of Manchester. They invented it. And then the UAE got very interested. They said, okay, for graphene to really make a difference, we've got to scale it up. We've got to commercialize it. They invested $1 billion, talking about the UAE, $1 billion, paired up the University of Manchester with the Khalifa University here in the UAE, and they're moving towards commercialization of graphene at scale. Now, the application, the number one application, which I get very excited about because, my urban area experience is in the construction sector. You can make better cement. I mean, cement is the dirty C word in my in my book. So the more you can do to clean this up, the better. So a lot happening, and still there's scope for more. But if the past is any indication, I think the future will have some brilliant examples of strong public-private partnerships driving action.
And it's really interesting, especially because that will trickle down due to the links that we have also in our region, especially with the UAE and Saudi, especially even in Kenya, where I'm talking from. So it will help also transfer technology and innovation towards also other emerging
Absolutely,
areas.
Samuel, this is the ambition. And having worked closely with the leadership here in the UAE, it's not just about the UAE. When someone speaks green economy, what they mean is how can we help others? How can we help the global south? And there are many examples, I'll share them in a bit, where this is actually working.
Fantastic. And this is really important. Maybe we can jump also on that while we discuss a bit also the financial part, because of course we have many ambitions and you have talked about many things, but of course, and also the constraints that we sometimes in the global south, we have how we finance this, how we can get unlocking capital to flow and achieve sustainability goals. So how the financial institution, especially we know the states and others, can support more, and which are also the tools that can increase investment in these solutions, and especially also to help us also in the global south.
I know financing is key. I mean, we can talk about technology transfer, but without financing, you can't do it. And there are a number of gaps there as well. I think the good thing is there's a lot of work happening. I understand the UAE is working very hard on a green taxonomy. I mean, what constitutes a sustainable activity? That should come out soon, but that hasn't stopped much of the work already taking place. I mean, the Dubai Sustainable Finance Declaration was announced in 2016. It was ages ago, and a lot of work has happened since then. Abu Dhabi got theirs in 2019. There are working groups that were set up also in 2019 looking at sustainable finance. Now, I think largely the reliance has been on what we call green, social sustainability or sustainability linked bonds, a heavy reliance on the debt market. I think I've seen projections that are saying that you could look at issuances in excess of $1 trillion just by the end of this year. So you can see where the reliance is, and those proceeds are being used for, let's say, renewable energy projects or other housing and things like that. So I think there's a lot happening, but still a lot needs to be done. The UAE and KSA is definitely leading this space. But there are a lot of other interesting things happening. There are some, let's say, partnerships between NGOs and banks. And this is particularly for, let's say, nature-based solutions for coastal ecosystems. And what they're looking at is that blended finance model where you can de-risk the investor, you can use concessional capital and crowd in other funding. So I think that's going to be the way forward. To give you an example, there's Mazda, which is the future energy company here in the UAE. Last year, they had their debut issuance of $750 million of a green bond, 2023. This year, literally like a few weeks ago, they've announced $1 billion. So you're seeing the reliance on this. This is all for greenfield renewable energy projects. So yes, there is an ambition within Mazda. They want about, I think, 100 gigawatts of power under their portfolio by 2030. How are they going to achieve that? So the reliance is, yes, on the bond market. Having said that, I think there's still scope for more. And so this is, let's say, within the UAE, but there's also the international development that the UAE does, as I mentioned earlier. It's a very recent deal that was announced is DP World, the port administrator out of Dubai, has partnered with the British Investments International, BII, which is sort of the impact investor of the UK government. They're building a deep water port in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Right now, this goes to show how you partner. You use capital in a smart way to actually help not yourself but others. And this is the ambition of the UAE. I really like. Another fund that's been set up. It was announced at COP28. Is Altera. $30 billion is what they're committing, but they just don't want to spend 30 billion. The ambition is they want to crowd in and mobilize funding for $250 billion. And this is going to go into a number of areas. So I think there's a lot that you can expect will happen based on partnerships with. I'd like to talk about what we really need or what would be good to see. The first one, I think, which we really need to work on, because these are coastal countries, we need to see blue bonds. Ocean financing. There's a very interesting report. I recommend your users, listeners, look at it. HSBC and Systemic have just it's a groundbreaking report on what you need for ocean financing. I think there's going to be a lot of work on that and a lot of learning from countries like Indonesia that have done this stuff. I think you'll see some movement there. Blended finance needs to take off. It currently hasn't. You see these small pockets of work happening, but it really hasn't taken off. It's not delivering. And there are issues there. There's risk aversion, there's inflation risks, there's foreign currency risk, so one needs to manage that. It's not just about credit risk anymore. There's a lot more involved. Then I think the one gap, which is massive, and if we don't fix that, there's going to be trouble for everyone, is adaptation financing. The UNEP has projected the gap is roughly about 20 times as much as the flows in this space. Now, what that means is, how can I help a developing country adapt to the issues related to climate change if there's no financing for it? So the numbers speak for themselves. Probably developing countries are going to be in trouble if this is not sorted out. We've got COP29 coming up very soon. They're calling it the COP of finance. Maybe things get sorted. We really do need clarity on this. And it would be great to see something coming out from there. And then, moving away from this underprepared, underfinanced realm, I think one thing that we need to address and people need to wake up to is the role of insurance. Investing or protecting your capital stack. I know, Samuel, I know a number of entrepreneurs who are building technology that is uninsurable. They build it. They say, okay, we're ready to market. And at no part of their go-to-market strategy is engaging with insurance companies. Say, how do you price the risk of my new tech? It's new. No one's done it before. There's no historical basis to price the risk in that. So the role of insurance cannot be understated. I'm already seeing what's happening in different parts of the world, particularly California, where insurers refuse to insure, coastal homeowners. That's a big problem. So where does the hammer fall? The hammer is going to fall on government, which is the insurer of the last resort, which leads to further pressures on public funding, and it's not going to be a good situation. So I think we really need to tackle these things, these areas I've mentioned. We should see a lot more happening in down the road.
Fantastic, Hassaan, and a lot of food for thoughts and a lot of things also they are touching some of the work that I'm doing under my other hats. And it's really something that it's of critical importance, especially for the global south, and not only because also the role of insurance is something we have touched in some other episode, and it's really important also for development and to achieve sustainable social goals. We are approaching a bit the end of the episode, and I mean it was packed with fantastic insights, which I'm really grateful. And as the last bit of for this episode, which is your final message that you want to leave to our audience, especially to the one that want to contribute to sustainability?
Okay, now that's a good question. Very happy to shed some light on that. So I mean, you probably have a very wide list of people who listen. So I'll tackle different ones, right? So let's say job seekers, skilled professionals. This is the place to be. There is a skills shortage. It's beyond just ESG reporting. There's a lot more to it. So if you have green skills, it's a great time to consider this area, this part of the world. Your skills are needed. If you're doing anything in AI, it's great. It's a great time to be here. So yeah, for job seekers, I think there's a gold mine here, or I should say a green mine here. If you're an investor, if you're an asset manager, money manager, there is currently a rush to set up here in the UAE, particularly my city, Abu Dhabi. The Abu Dhabi global markets is on a very ambitious path to attract asset managers. Just in the past year, in 2024, the assets under management have grown 200%. That's incredible. So it gives you an idea there's something happening here. And I'll give you like just today's news. Prudential Insurance, their investment management arm, literally a few hours ago, they've set up an office and they've announced we've set up an office in Abu Dhabi. Ray Dalio's Bridgewater is here. Now, these are big names. So there's a rush. So if you're an asset manager, an investor, if you're a family office, it's a great time to come here because there are incentives. It's a very transparent structure. And of course, you get benefits from being here. And there's a lot of investment that you can jump in on. So I think that's key. If you're an entrepreneur, I think the most important message is for you. As I said, they have a vision for a green economy, but that doesn't just mean they want to buy product. What the MENA region wants is for entrepreneurs to come here, set up here, export to the world from here. Sort of like the graphene example I gave earlier. I think that's key. There are entities like Hub 71 sitting here in Abu Dhabi. You've got the DIFC Innovation Hub in Dubai. They're open for business. They provide a lot of mentoring, support, and they really embed you within the ecosystem of innovators that are doing great things out of here. So really look at that. And I think that pretty much covers the spectrum of listeners. But I think the general message I would have for everyone is, I know we live in it, I know I like it, but please disregard the glitz and the glamour. Come match the ambition. I think that's the main message I'd want to give everyone. They have serious ambitions to do things. Come help them achieve it. The Singapore model is, I think, being heavily implemented here. The Singapore doesn't spend its own money. Singapore spends the world's money. Global capital sits in Singapore. And this is, I think to an extent, is going to be exceeded. That ambition is going to be exceeded here, particularly in the UAE. So it's a great time to look at it and consider moving. So that's my advice. And of course, keep your eyes open on the news. Great things are going to be coming out of here, particularly for the Global South. There are a lot of partnerships that are being forged with the Global South. And in the run-up to COP29, but more importantly, in the run-up to COP30 in Brazil, you'll be seeing a lot. So over the next 12 months, I think this is the place you want to be to do things for the rest of the world.
Fantastic, Hassaan. And I'm taking some wonderful notes. And I want to thank you so much for this wonderful episode, rich of insights and very good advice. Thank you so much, Hassaan.
Thank you, Samuel. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.